Hello there, book friends. I'm Addie, and this is Books and Tea Time, and today we have my spring wrap-up. I've got a bunch of notes here, and I'm really excited to talk about all the books that I read in the spring season. I do seasonal wrap-ups instead of monthly wrap-ups, so today we're going to talk about all the books that I read from early April through like the second week of June. If you're interested in seeing some of my previous wrap-ups, I do have an entire playlist that I'll have linked up above my head for you to go check out. We have 11 books to talk about today. Some of them are audiobooks, some of them I have physically. First, starting off incredibly strong, the first book that I read in the spring was The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. Don't know if I'm saying that right. This is incredible. It is kind of a retelling, kind of just a mythology-inspired story, a Norse mythology-inspired story about a witch named Angerboda. Angerboda is the mother of Hel, Fenrir, and Jormungand, which are three deities or figures in Norse mythology. We also see a lot of really popular Norse characters like Thor, Loki, Odin, Freya, all of that. But also we see my absolute favorite Norse mythological figure, who is Skadi. She is a giantess and a skilled hunter, and I was so thrilled that she had such a large role in this book because it was incredible. I love mythology and different mythological pantheons, and so reading a book like this is just absolutely my cup of tea. I flew through this book. The writing is so beautiful, but also so funny. I wasn't expecting this book to be so funny and lighthearted at moments. It's not entirely like that. There are definitely some sad, heartbreaking moments and some really intense parts of this book as well, but it was really funny. Like, Angerboda, one of her primary love interests in the book and the father of her 3 children is Loki, and their banter and the back and forth between them, especially like in the earlier phases of the book when they're like flirting and courting each other, it's really humorous. And Angerboda has a very straightforward and dry sense of humor, but it really works for me. I don't know, I really liked it. But the writing overall is really beautiful, and the story is just, it's so heartbreaking but also so empowering. We have discussions of loss and grief, love, loneliness, motherhood, parenthood in general, the afterlife, and what that looks like in this mythological work is really interesting. And one of the most difficult things for Angerboda is that she is a witch who has been burnt at the stake for witchcraft multiple times, and at the beginning of this book she has recently been burned and had her heart cut out because she refuses to predict the future for Odin, and Loki returns her heart, and that's how they become sort of a thing, and they start speaking and flirting and things of that nature. But also she can't remember anything really that happened before that, so a large part of the second half of this book is her coming into herself and trying to find that part of herself that has been almost erased from her memory, and the ancient power and this magic in a forest where she has made her new home, and discovering that. It's really beautiful. I teared up while reading this, and I laughed while reading this. I got butterflies while reading this because Angerboda does have a second love interest that, for the sake of spoilers, I will not disclose who that is, but I absolutely, my heart burst with joy and happiness for that part of the story. So it's really amazing, really sweet and cute and a little steamy at times. Another interesting thing that we get is looking at Loki and the various ways that he is an outcast in the Norse god community, because Angerboda has created this hidden forest home for herself away from the gods, but Loki comes to visit her, so we get a little bit about his background. It's not only because he is not biologically related to like a lot of these other gods, he is also a giant, just as Angrboda and Scotty are giants as well, but he's also very gender fluid. There is a moment where he turns into a horse to like fix some like trickery he's done. He turns into a horse and gives birth to a calf, which I can't remember the name of, and he confesses to Angrboda the frustrations that he has with the like heteronormative structure that Odin and the other gods of like the Norse court enforce upon him, and how he never feels like at home there. And so he comes to Angrboda to feel more himself and to be more comfortable, but at the same time his coping mechanism and the way that he deals with some of that, and the fact that he keeps returning back to that space and playing their like court games really frustrates Angrboda. So that part of their relationship is really nuanced and interesting. I highly recommend it. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, one of the easiest 5 out of 5 stars I've ever given, and absolutely going to be a very top contender for one of my best books of 2021, I'm sure. If you like Circe by Madeline Miller, I think you would really like this. There's a lot of like similar vibes. It's definitely not the same, but I think if you like that book, you would really like this book. If you just like witch stories and mythology in general, if you like Norse mythology in particular, you get so many characters or like figures from Norse mythology that appear in this book, and it's just absolutely amazing. I love that part of it. If you like really like consuming narratives that just suck you in and like you cannot put it down until you find out what happens and you finish the book, just absolute page turner, beautiful writing, a little bit of humor, but just overall really beautiful and readable and bingeable and amazing. Next, I read Unsouled by Will White, which is the first book in the Cradle series. I did an entire dedicated vlog to me reading this, so I'll have a link to that if you want to hear a little more of my in-depth thoughts on this book. But I read this because it was recommended very highly by one of my other favorite booktube channels, Q and TG. They do a lot of fantasy reading, and as a fantasy reader myself, I really love to watch their videos and hear their recommendations, and this is one of their favorite series. They talk about it all the time, and I really just wanted to start it, so I read this and did an entire reading vlog for it. I think this is a really solid first book in a long fantasy series. I think there are 9 books out to date, and I'm not really sure how many are supposed to be in the series, but they're all around this length, so I was really intrigued by the fact that there are these very like readable, doable sized fantasy books, you know, like compared to like Fires of Vengeance, for example, which is just right in front of me. I haven't read this yet, but like, I mean, when you compare the size, to me it's very readable fantasy, and I was interested in that. The world building is so intricate and detailed, and I do think that it's a little hard to follow just because it's just saturated with information. And I think by the end I started to understand a lot more what was going on, but you will be confused, and it is a little rushed in the world building, but I'm not really that mad about it because the series is so long, and I feel like in books 2 and 3 we're gonna get more and more until we continue to be more and more comfortable and knowledgeable about the world. But the world is massive. Like, I cannot stress that enough, and I don't want to give anything away, but there's this point like around the 70-page mark where like you've been in this small village with this one character, and it's really interesting, and you're getting to know the world and what's going on with the magic system, and then all of a sudden the world cracks open, and it's like looking at an entire universe of possibility for this series, and I just really look forward to seeing what Will White does with that, because I do think there's so much potential there. The combat magic system is really interesting. There are different paths that everybody takes, so everyone is supposed to follow a particular path that is meant to cultivate and enhance their own magic that they are born with, that is kind of like borderline like spiritual, like aura stuff that's going on. Like you cycle your aura within your body through like meditation, and you advance different levels. Like everyone advances to these particular levels within their own specified path. It's kind of like you pick a niche thing that you want to get really good at in this world. The problem though for our main character Lyndon is that he is unsouled, so he doesn't have a soul in according to his community, and therefore he doesn't have magic or a strong enough aura in order to follow any of these paths. So he's kind of an outcast in his community, and he's really struggling with that, and we're kind of following him as he learns to make his own path in this book. I ended up giving this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I think it's a really solid first installment. I'm definitely going to continue on with the series, and I'm glad that I picked it up. I actually have books 2 and 3 already, so you will be seeing more of this series in future wrap-ups for sure. I think this is a really great fantasy because it's very readable and short, and it's interesting. Even though that the world building is confusing at times, especially in this first book, it's interesting, and I do think that it's just going to get better and better. At least I have hopes that it will. If you like class-based or like magic systems that have like different groups and clans and like levels, I don't know if I'm really describing this correctly, short bingeable fantasy, and if you like a little bit of a sci-fi element in your fantasy, this definitely has that. So yeah, Unsouled by Will White. These next 5 books I actually did a wrap-up for because I did a challenge video where I tried to read 5 books in 7 days, and I picked the books based on Jesse's deck of TBR, which is a TBR game created by Jesse from Bow Ties and Books. That was really long. Hope that makes sense. I'll have a card to that video with really in-depth reviews, but I'm just gonna fly through them really quickly so that you guys know what I read, and if you want to hear more about those books, just go ahead and click the little thingy that I'm going to insert above my head, and you can check them out there. The first 2 that I read are novellas in the same series, and they are The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, both by Nevo. They are incredible, absolutely bingeable, quick. I listened to both of them in one evening. So yes, because they're short, but also because I could not stop. I wanted to just keep listening. The audiobook is like almost ASMR, like the narrator like whispers it to you, and it's so enchanting and transportive. There's a lot of like folktale, oral history, oral storytelling that goes into this, and it's about a non-binary cleric who's our main character, and they go around throughout rural China collecting stories from people that they travel with or that they encounter on their travels. And in the first one, Chi, who is our main character, speaks with a former handmaiden to an empress in China, and we get a little bit about that. There's a little bit of like a plot twisty moment. And then in the second one, Chi runs into 3 tigresses who can speak, very magical realism-esque, and they exchange. So Chi tells a story and the tigresses tell that same story but from their different perspectives, and they like compare and contrast. But there's also a really thrilling, suspenseful aspect because the tigresses want to eat Chi and their traveling companion, and Chi is procrastinating that event by engaging in this like back and forth storytelling to try and buy themselves time. I gave both of them 5 out of 5 stars. Lyrical, transportive writing, really fun, great plot twists, and just overall really immersive and interesting. I cannot wait to read Nevo's debut novel. I am absolutely falling in love with her writing, and she's quickly becoming one of my new favorite authors. So definitely highly recommend these. The audiobook is great, but I'm sure reading it physically is just as great. If you like folk tales, fairy tales, short bingeable reads, mystifying, enchanting storytelling, and if you need a new favorite author, because I think that everyone will fall in love with Nevo just as quickly and head over heels as I did. So definitely check out these novellas. I really hope that we're getting a 3rd one in the near future. After that, for the same video, I read An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. River Solomon is another author that is just absolute favorite, insta-buy, top tier, love them so much. and An Unkindness of Ghosts is a science fiction novel that takes place entirely on like this massive spaceship that is taking the remainders of humanity to this promised land. It's science fiction, but there's also like a thriller mystery element to it that I really, really loved. And we're following our main character, Aster, who is a botanist kind of and a healer in her community of the ship. The class system of this ship is based on the antebellum South, so you have a lot of people of color, BIPOC folks, that are forced to the lower decks and treated as enslaved individuals and abused by the upper class and rich white folks on this ship. It was really good, really suspenseful. I liked Aster a lot, and her love interest as well. They are both, throughout the entire book, questioning and coming into an identity that makes sense for them and navigating that while also having to play by the rules of the heteronormative hegemonic structure to preserve themselves and preserve their lives. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend it if you like immersive writing, if you like sci-fi, definitely if you don't mind some thriller mystery elements in your sci-fi and fantasy, biting humor, social commentary, autistic representation or neurodiversity, and if you are looking for a new favorite author, again, River Solomon is an insta-buy for me. I am currently reading Sorrowland, which is their most recent published work, and really liking it, so stay tuned for that in my summer wrap-up, absolutely. After that, I read Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. This is a collection of essays, and it is about Hong's experience as an Asian American, specifically a Korean American woman and poet, and cultivating her particular poetic style and how that is difficult as an Asian woman, and what publishers and readers expect of Asian writers or just Asian creatives in general, and what they expect from the works and pieces of art that Asian folks publish. But it's also about love and friendship and creativity and mental health. What's really interesting is that Hong also weaves in stories of other Asian folks and other Asian poets, creatives that she has learned about throughout her life, and kind of weaves them into the stories as well. It's funny, it's sad, it's also very informative, especially as someone who is not Asian, to read about the Asian experience, and someone who really loves the commentary on the academic space as someone who majored in English literature and wants to go back to grad school. Reading about that from Hong's perspective was really touching and telling. If you like essay collections, books about writing, creative writing, and academia, and a little bit of twisted humor in a sense, and just books that incorporate humor, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, really loved it, and it was one of the books that I read for the Asian Readathon. I also forgot to mention that Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain were also books that I read for the Asian Readathon. So yeah. Last but not least for that video, I read Paper Girls Volume 2. Love this series so much. The art is amazing. It's so heartwarming. It's about this group of friends that had a paper route, and then a bunch of wild science fiction, fantasy-esque stuff happens. There's time travel, there's dinosaurs, which I still really don't understand, and in this book, the girls who are from the 80s travel to the present in I think like 2016 or something, and the main character, Erin, meets her future self. This is also a book that I read kind of accidentally for the Asian Readathon, because I realized as I was reading this and remembering the characters and what's going on that our main character is Asian American as well. It's confusing, but it's also cute and heartwarming. It really just throws you into this world and whatever's going on. And if you like graphic novels, sci-fi, Stranger Things, The Goonies, vibes like that, movies, shows like that, you will absolutely love this. It's also just really, really good. The art style's amazing, and it's funny. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. That's all the books that I read and wrapped up in detail in that video. Again, go check it out if you want to hear more about the books and didn't feel like I gave too much detail. I just didn't want to repeat myself too much. After that, I read Some Kind of Fairytale by Graham Joyce. So my aunt gave this to me for my birthday like months ago, and I finally got around to it, and she said that she really liked it. And I love when people recommend books to me that they really liked and think that I'll like, etc. So I decided to finally read this. So here's the thing. I'm gonna read the back of this book to you, and then we're gonna have a chat about it. So the back of this book says, 20 years ago, teenager Tara Martin disappeared in the dense English forest known as the Outwoods. Her parents and her brother Peter were left to fear the unthinkable, but on Christmas Day, the doorbell rings and there Tara stands, disheveled, unapologetic, and not looking a day over 16. It's a miracle, but Peter is skeptical, especially when Tara claims that she was abducted by fairies. As those who loved and missed Tara attempt to understand where she's been for 2 decades, they begin to ask the same question. Has Tara lost her sanity, or have they? Maybe this is just me, maybe I misunderstood something, but when I read the back of this and I went into this book expecting it to be a thriller of some sense. Like, I expected that there were going to be more thrilling elements where we were going to question who we believed and what was going on, and it was going to be a little more ambiguous, and there was going to be this borderline thing where you weren't going to know if she was abducted by fairies or if something else really sinister and creepy happened. I don't know if maybe it was just not executed properly, or maybe I went into it expecting the wrong thing and I just misunderstood, but to me, it was kind of a letdown, a little bit of a disappointment. It's really heavy on the fairy tale stuff, which typically I would really like, and I think that if you went into this and told me that this is a book about fairies in the modern day, I would probably have liked it a little bit more. But I was just expecting it to be a little more ambiguous whether or not like fairies were real. What's really weird to me is that the author makes it kind of clear that you're supposed to believe that fairies are real and you're supposed to believe that Tara's telling the truth, but then all the other characters don't believe her and are really skeptical, and they make up all these other possible things that could have happened, like she could have been murdered by the boyfriend, or she's really crazy and she's got these psychological problems, or she ran away and just decided to come back. My advice is to approach this with caution, read it for yourself, and then tell me what you think, because I have a very difficult time rating and discussing this book. I ended up giving it a 3 stars, but that's a very shaky rating because when I think about what I wanted from it, I want to give it a 2 star, but then when I think about the fact that, like, it's not the book's fault that I misunderstood, but then I'm like, is it the book's fault? If you like dark fairy tale stuff, if you like family dynamic kind of stories or like drama between families, there is a lot of that in this book, which I wasn't crazy about because I feel like this book was trying to be 3 different things at once. It was trying to be like a dramatic family issue kind of a book that explores the relationships between families and like these very different individuals and things like that. It was trying to be that. It was trying to be a thriller, which was a big dull dud. It failed on that. And it was trying to be a book about fairies in like the modern present world. And because it's trying to do all those things at once, to me, it just kind of doesn't succeed at doing any of them. Okay, after that, I listened to The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa, I think is her name. It was cute, it was steamy, it was silly and sweet. I really liked it. It was really solid romance, not my favorite. The main girl is really cool. She's a wedding planner and she's very organized, and I related to that part of her and her personality a lot. She's also really funny and sweet. There's a lot about Brazilian culture and Brazilian cuisine in this book because our main character is Brazilian American. The only thing that I didn't really like is that the male lead, I feel like this is a theme in a lot of romances that I've read, and I don't really like it. To me, there's a formula for a lot of these adult romances where like there's obviously a problem or a thing that gets everything going. There's the steamy moments, the cute moments, and then there's like the conflict or like the baggage and confronting each other's baggage and figuring out like, can you be together? And to me, the baggage in this one was just a little too far-fetched. Not only because the main girl at the beginning is dumped by the main guy's brother at the altar. Like, she's supposed to marry the one brother. He's like, psych, I can't do this. And then like, I think a few years later, she runs into his younger brother, and for specific reasons, they have to work together on this work project thing, and so they start falling for each other. But I could even get on board with that because like not every family is super close. He has this weird competitive thing with his brother where like they've always competed against each other, and he's like, I can't be with her because I'll always be wondering if she wanted him instead, and like if I'm just number two. And like, I feel like there's this theme in so many romances where the male has an issue with like a competitive thing with their brother, and it's just like, it's so annoying because like men can have other problems other than just like this masculine like competition thing with their brother over like who's better, who has a better job, who's more successful, who like gets the girl. Like, to me, it's just really annoying. But other than that, it was really good. If you disregard those two things, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. If you like enemies to lovers, there's also a stay away element to this one as well. Very steamy. There's an office-ish romance vibe to it. It's not exactly an office romance, but like they have to work together and like team up to do this thing. I recommend it if you like romance. If you like adult romance, I think it's good. Next, I read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I read this 1,000-page book in like 2.5 weeks. I'm super proud of myself. I loved it so much. And if you've read this book, I have an entire spoiler summary reaction-filled video vlog of me reading this and talking about everything that happens. So if you're interested in that, I'll have a card to that. I'm really proud of that video. I had so much fun filming it, and I hope you like it. So if you've read these books, if you've read this book, please go watch it. However, I am going to keep this review spoiler free for you guys because I don't like to spoil stuff in my wrap-ups, obviously. That wouldn't be very nice, so we're not gonna do that. I'm so glad that I finally started this series. I knew that I was gonna like it. I had very high hopes and high expectations because I really like fantasy. I love the epic, massive fantasy vibes that we get from this, and I like Brandon Sanderson. He has really unique world building and magic systems. This book delivered. I mean, it really did. It's a multi-POV, and I really liked all the POVs. Kaladin is my favorite though. He's my favorite character. Absolutely loved him. This book is 1,000 pages, but it doesn't feel like 1,000 pages when you're reading it. Like, at the beginning of the year, I read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I talked about that in my winter wrap-up if you want to hear about it. But that book was like 850 pages, and it felt like it. I wanted it to be over. I did not like it. It was overhyped. It was way too long. But this, no, like it's long, but it's not too long because every page is important. Every page is interesting and it adds something to the story. So I don't mind long books, but they have to be long for a reason other than the author could not edit. It's rich, it's complex, the world building, everything is so interesting. Follow a variety of different characters on this huge world. Let me just tell you, if you like fantasy, you should just read this book. Just read it. Just trust me. If you like fantasy, if you like my other recommendations, if you like books that I like that I've talked about before, just take my word for it and do it. Take the dive, jump right in, get yourself a copy and do it. The first 300 pages, you're gonna have no idea what's going on and you're gonna be overwhelmed. I'm gonna tell you that right now. You're gonna be overwhelmed. In that first 300 pages, you're gonna need to get your bearings. But after that, you're just like in it for the long haul. You're along for the ride. You're there. You are a die-hard Stormlight fan. Brandon Sanderson just puts so much care and detail into every single page that he writes, and you can tell. There's illustrations that are, again, so detailed, and they matter, and they teach you something about the world. They're not just there for decoration. Everything about it is just perfect. I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I expect that my ratings and my experience and my enjoyment is only going to go up from there. Oh my god, I'm so excited to talk about this next book. Okay, last but absolutely never least, I think this book is going to be my favorite book of the year. It's going to be very, very hard for any other book that I read to compete with this book. I listened to Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and I loved it so much. Oh my god, it was perfect. I want to reread this like every day of my life. I'm just gonna read a page of this every morning just to like kickstart my day and make me happy. Read it right now. I don't care if you don't like romance, you're gonna like this book. I really don't. Like, I have been reading more romance lately, but I don't love romance. Like, I'm very picky about romance, and this just set the bar so high. I feel bad for all the other romance books that are ever gonna be written or have been written. Let's start with what it's about. This book is a love story between the son of the first lady of the United States. The first female president is the mother of one of our main characters. One of our main characters is a young Latinx American boy named Alex. He is the son of the first lady. He really wants to be a senator by 30. He's got all of these really like great plans for his life. He's really personable and amazing, and he like has grown accustomed to being in the public eye. He's incredibly smart, and he's finishing up his bachelor's degree and working with his mom, and just he's killing it in life, right? Then you have Prince Henry, like the third in line for the throne, or second in line for the throne of England. They are enemies. At the beginning of this book, they got off on the wrong foot several times ago, or several years ago when they first met. And at the very beginning, Alex has to go to Henry's older brother's wedding, who is like the prince in line to take over the throne. His name's Philip. And at the wedding, things go down, and they are forced to hang out together afterwards in like the public eye to convince people that they don't hate each other. First of all, the representation. We have a bisexual main character, a gay main character who suffers with depression and other issues in his life. We have trans side characters, pan side characters, another bi side character, the first female president of the frickin' United States, politicians that are diverse. Really, really interesting to see that and to like see it represented, but also to see their struggles in the political space as people who are like minority groups. And also another thing that I really like about the political undercurrent of this is that it's not overwhelming, but it's there. And also Henry and Alex both, during separate moments, recognize the incredibly problematic and detrimental and harmful history of America and the United Kingdom and imperialism, colonialism, everything, what they have done to indigenous and BIPOC folks around the world. They recognize that, and they want to use their power and their political influences to do something about that and to fix it. And that's really beautiful to see the ways that they both want to work towards repairing that, but also just moving forward and creating a better world. Let's talk about Henry, who is absolutely my new favorite fictional character of all time. I want to be his best friend. I want to just hang out with him all the time and give him a hug and support him and be his BFF, because I love him so much. I would take a bullet for that man. He is such a sweet little marshmallow. He's like a marshmallow that's a little burnt on the outside because he has like this like hard exterior that he uses to protect himself and like a cool attitude, because like he has to be like the prince. He has to put on this facade of like the English monarchy, but on the inside he's just a gay little angel, and I love him so much. He's amazing. He has a dog named David that he cuddles all the time, and he has such a good relationship with his sister, and they're very close and sweet, and he secretly loves Jane Austen, but like the crown and the public tells everyone that his favorite novelist is Charles Dickens, but he's like, I love Jane Austen, and it's so sweet. And there's a moment at the beginning where Alex is making fun of him because he reads Lord Byron, and I was like, take me now, Jesus. We would be absolute best friends instantly. If he was real, I would literally fly to England and stalk him to be his friend, because it's meant to be. But he also struggles with mental health, and he recently lost his father, and his mother has been closed off since that event, so he really relies on his relationship with his sister, and they support each other because his sister has had issues with drug use in the past, and she's recovering and helping other people in England to recover. He's amazing. He's so sweet. I need a moment. Then we have Alex, who is much more outgoing, and I really loved seeing him come into himself and seeing him come out to the people in his life, because at the beginning of this book, he is still working out, understanding his bisexuality and coming to terms with it and telling his friends and his family and his parents about it, but also just working through that with Henry and what that means for him, and his relationship with his parents and his friends, and their reaction and their support is so heartwarming and beautiful, and I absolutely love it. And it just makes me so happy, because there are definitely challenges for both Henry and Alex as a gay couple, because obviously in the public eye and with the monarchy and also the presidency, there are challenges for them coming out, and there are consequences, because there are transphobic and homophobic and just generally xenophobic people in power that can really hurt them, and people in the media who can hurt them. But there's also just this absolute burst of support just comes to their aid, and their support and the beauty of the LGBTQIA2S+ community just bursts forth and gives you a big hug. And it's so sweet to have both the challenges recognized, but also the comfort and the support and the beauty of that community coming to their aid as well. Both of those things in tandem are really, really wonderful and gorgeous, and I love that about this book. I also really love Alex's tendency to overwork himself or deep dive into a project when he's got other problems in his life, because I definitely can relate to that, and I do that too. So seeing that part of him just really was one of the ways that I connected with his character. Nora, who is Alex's best friend, and his sister June are really, really great side characters, and Henry's sister Bee and Henry's best friend Percy, I think his name is, all really great side characters, and you get a lot of their personality too, which is nice with the side. A lot of times I think side characters in romances are just they're side characters, and they don't get their own personality and their own problems, but with the characters in this book, that is not the case, and that's really cool. This book is laugh out loud funny. It's hilarious. I cracked up. I was in the middle of doing something while I was listening to this, and I just started cackling, and my brother looked at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm listening to this book and it's hilarious. I laughed so many times. It is one of the only books that has made me laugh this much that I've ever read, and I love that. I love good humor in a book, and this book is just so funny. It's also steamy as hell. It's a good thing I wasn't wearing these glasses while I was reading, because they would have been steaming up. It's steamy, but it's also sweet and romantic at times as well. It's empowering, it's heartwarming, it's sweet, it's steamy, it's funny, it's everything. It's literally everything you could want in a book. A cup of tea on a gorgeous sunny morning where you're sitting on your porch and you're reading this book because it's the perfect book for every occasion. It's comfort, it's happiness, it's good friends and good times and happy tears, a warm hug. It's everything. It's everything. Read it, listen to it, borrow it from your library, buy it from a used bookstore, have someone else read it to you if they have a copy and you can't get one. I don't care. I will literally live stream me reading this book to you guys. Actually, that's probably illegal. But if it's not, I'll do it. Obviously, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. 6 out of 5 if I could. I can't wait to buy myself a physical copy, reread it, annotate it, and then reread it again. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much for coming and supporting my channel. Let me know down below what you read this month. If you read any of these books, let's talk about them. Keep it spoiler free, but let me know your thoughts. Let's chat, you know, that's what we're here for, to have bookish friend conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam, and I'll see you in my next video. Happy reading, happy writing, and happy living. Bye!